Hello, this is Michael Wojcik, the Rochester City Council update for February 1st, 2015. Meeting got over at about 11 p.m. tonight, so we'll call it a fast one. A number of different things went on at the meeting. Probably the more interesting ones will be charter communications, Hunter Valley Estates, and development in the Northwest. First of all, a couple things that handled in the consent agenda. We are going ahead and purchasing the surface parking lots from the senior center downtown. This had been planned for some time, and I imagine it'll be part of some redevelopment in the future. I'd love to see a 20-story residential tower or something like that there someday. It's a great development site, and it certainly should be something better than a surface parking lot. Also, we had a request to study a speed zone, and the traffic engineer wanted to spend money to do a study of the speeding out there, and I politely pointed out the state statute allows us to simply install bike lanes on that roadway, and we can set the speed anywhere we want down to 25 miles per hour, whatever we feel is safe. And I think we need to start taking that tactic instead of figuring out how fast cars want to go and just setting the speed limit there, which, believe it or not, is actually how speed limits have traditionally gotten set. Now people are kind of tired of the unsafe speeds in a lot of their neighborhoods, and this is a tool that we have, and I'm going to advocate for using more and more to do. There was some discussion as to whether or not it had to be 25 or anything, or any speed down to 25. Upon review, I was correct, and it's any speed down to 25 miles per hour. So look for this to solve a lot of posted speed sign issues throughout the city of Rochester in the future. We also had an issue, and we're going to push it to a public hearing at the next meeting. I'm actually not going to be at the next meeting. A little disappointed that I won't be there. But the key thing is there's a change, really probably a pretty benign change to a development in Kutsky Park, one that I did not support at the time. But it's not so much the benign change that's happening, but it's necessitating a surface parking lot being built inside the neighborhood. And I think that's a pretty substantial change and something that concerns me, and something that I will use every tool in my tool belt to try and make sure that we don't allow people to build surface parking lots in the middle of residential neighborhoods. We did have 4 votes to get it to a public hearing at the next meeting. Ultimately, we'll see where it goes from there, but the real issue with this one is going to be, do you think it's a big deal if you took one of the houses in your single-family residential neighborhood and turned it into a surface parking lot? Well, I think it's a pretty big deal, and it turned out 4 city council members thought it was a big enough deal that we're going to have a public hearing to discuss that, and it won't be the direct discussion, but I'm sure it's something the neighbor is going to want to weigh in on. We also had the Charter Communications non-exclusive franchise renewal that passed 6-1. I was the one voting against it, and my colleagues correctly point out that there's not a whole lot you can negotiate in these non-exclusive franchise agreements, but there were a few small things that I thought we could have done better. One was we felt Charter Communication owed us $24,000 from the last time, and in addition to that, they changed the channels in violation of the contract. Well, what I did is I turned around and said that if we were supposed to get 24,000 and we're getting compensated for changing those channels without permission, the 20,000 that we're getting in the new contract doesn't seem like fair compensation for us. So that alone was enough reason to vote against it. But I also would have put in some language that directly spoke to the requirements to upgrade technology or potentially utilize technology within the right-of-way if the city puts in a fiber network or something, so we can eliminate duplicate utilities, or should we go to undergrounding utilities, have a little bit more control on that. And lastly, I wanted to, even though it wouldn't affect Charter Communications, I wanted to put in language directly into this contract about allowing companies to stage providing services to the community little by little, so that new companies could come in and not have to cover the community immediately, because that's what really prevents a lot of competition from coming in. So I wasn't happy with the contract, but I always make it a point. I had the charter exec sitting there in the room, and I pointed out that we have a lot of kids in this community, and we didn't have much to do with broadband with this right now, but we've got kids in this community that take home backpacks full of food, so they don't starve to death at home. These families, if they want to get broadband access, have to pay $720 a year to get broadband from the only game in town charter. That's ridiculous. It's a shame, and every time I've got the charter executives in the room, I'm going to continue bringing this up because it's an absolute travesty. $720 a year is the most affordable broadband you can get in the city of Rochester. And that's the unbundled Charter price. I find it to be reprehensible, and Charter's technology is very poor at the same time as well. It's not competitive for our businesses. It's really a sad state that city administration has allowed the technology in the city of Rochester to get as far behind as it has gotten. President Staver called me out a little bit for saying that I can't go after Charter because they're just doing what their business needs to do. And my response was, "Oh, you better believe I can go after Charter. No issue with that whatsoever. Charter is a poor corporate citizen, and our kids, our families, our business competitiveness in the community is suffering as a result of their monopoly status." And I did mention there's a group on Facebook on broadband. You can find it through my page, but there's hundreds of us working towards a common goal of getting affordable, competitive, world-class broadband in Rochester. We don't have it yet, and we really believe that we can get there, and we're going to make it an election issue this year. Obviously, I'm a huge supporter for broadband, and come the elections at the end of 2016, if there are 4 people on the city council who demand great affordable broadband for the community, we will get it. Hunter Valley Estates. It's a mixed-use development with some medium-density residential and business uses. Did pass tonight. A number of issues were raised, and I think most of them were pretty satisfactorily covered by the language that the City Council put forward. I think the real issue up there, the one thing that didn't pass unanimously, was the a B4 zoning district, which you've heard me previously describe as a disaster for neighborhoods. And, you can do some decent things in B4, but you can also get like that natural food, natural grocer sign that's on Circle Drive, or you can get, some pretty awful looking developments with B4 as well. And there's just no quality control. And part of the issue is we're stuck with these zoning codes from the 1960s and 70s, and they're so horribly out of date. And I've asked for years, I've pushed, I've brought it to a vote to update our zoning codes, and I've never had the votes to do it, so we have the tools that we have. And B4 ended up being put in use. I would have rather seen a special district go in there, so we could have done a little quality control with the lighting and the signage and the building aesthetics, but it is what it is, and that's pretty well shielded from the neighborhood. So overall, I think it'll be a pretty compatible development. And hey, the public infrastructure that we're putting in for this development will probably have enough tax revenues from the development to cover the infrastructure expenses. Which brings me to the next 40 acres of sprawl up in northwest Rochester. 40 acres, 106 homes. The issue with that is that the property taxes that those homes will pay, even let's say they average $300,000 or $350,000 a home, those property taxes will not come close to covering the services that those homes need. In addition to that, they're not going to have any ability to maintain this public infrastructure that we're putting in. We're putting in a huge amount of public infrastructure. The developer puts it in initially, but then we have a huge liability forever thereafter. And I've raised the concern, it's like, well, wait a minute. Some of these roads are, community connectors and they're needed, but some of these roads are just, they only benefit private development and individual households. Those should not be public roads. Those should be private roads because, frankly, we can't afford it. And we've gotten ourselves into this situation where we have a billion-dollar future liability in our transportation infrastructure just because we built so much more than we could ever afford to maintain. And you do that because for every one development that actually generates enough in taxes to pay for its infrastructure, we're doing 10 or 15 that doesn't come close to it. And the hole keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I keep pointing it out, but we're not taking any serious action. I am pointing out now that, too, every time we accept this public infrastructure, we are voting to raise taxes on families, raise taxes on businesses, and I think we need to be called out when we do that. This is a terrible investment. I'm sure it'll be a very nice neighborhood, lots of great people living there. But as a city, it's a terrible investment. And how many money-losing investments do you want to make? And, this is probably where President Staver and I disagree more than anything else. I absolutely do not like the sprawl that does not pay for itself. It becomes a liability for the community forever thereafter. Not only does President Staver like the sprawl, he actually is very supportive of subsidizing it. And it came out in his comments today, too, where he was telling that, well, we do this all the time, where we spread the costs over many different things. So it's like, when you say spread the cost, you're talking about taking a single family neighborhood and having the rest of the community, subsidize this luxury housing product in a single family neighborhood. Now, me personally, I believe public dollars would be better used for libraries, broadband, public transportation, affordable housing, lower taxes. I don't think that subsidizing these sprawled out single family neighborhoods is a very good use of the tax dollars, and it's especially unfair to the businesses who disproportionately pay higher property taxes. But every time we make these decisions, we dig the hole a little bit deeper. Now, he called me out for, well, you keep bringing up the problem, but what about solutions? I'm like, I just gave you a solution. There are roads in here like a cul-de-sac. Just make it a private road. Then the people who live there are responsible for maintaining it. The city's not. It doesn't add to our liability. When I was growing up, you learned that if you want to get out of a hole, and we are in a huge hole, the first thing you do is stop digging. But nope, the council went ahead and we're going to keep digging this hole even bigger. We're going to keep building more and more infrastructure that we can't possibly afford. And we've done a lot of analysis in terms of how much we would need to do, but probably if we were to get on par with what we needed for our road maintenance expenses, probably expect a 30% tax increase across the board today. It is fairly substantial like that. And my solution is really quite simple. First of all, stop making bad investments and only make good investments. If you have a proposal for infrastructure that's not going to pay for itself, don't accept it as public infrastructure. Make it be private infrastructure. And as you keep making good investments and you infill and you make good responsible development decisions, we can actually get to a point where we're not bankrupting ourselves with poor infrastructure decisions. I've made this case a number of times before, and one of the things I like to tell people is geographically we're approaching the size of Minneapolis, but we have less than 1/3 of the population and nowhere near the business tax base. What do you think is going to happen to our taxes in the long run when we're maintaining a similar amount of infrastructure to what they're maintaining? I mean, it is going to kill us. It's going to bury us. And the only reason we haven't felt it yet is because so much of this was built in the 80s and 90s and hasn't really come calling yet. We're just doing a terrible disservice to future generations. And, some of the people, I'm probably one of the people that's going to be feeling it through ridiculously high taxes in the future. So I'm going to keep fighting against this very irresponsible, poorly thought out development. And ultimately, I stand ready to act on these issues at any point. And what we really need to focus on getting is how are we going to fund our services into the future? And nobody's talking about that right now. We're not having the discussions as a city council. So it's going to be a real issue. And this is something I really hope to make an election issue this year as well, is just let's stop digging the hole bigger. I am heartened that I finally got city administration kind of on board with this, and public works staff and finance staff. They're working with me and some of the work that I've done with my students in the past to analyze this, and we're going to put together some recommendations. But right now, the recommendations are just going to look like substantially higher taxes in the near run to pay for some of this stuff, and we can do better than that. So thank you always for watching. Hope you found it educational. And if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. I'm trying to be very responsive. So thanks again, and I'll catch you next time.